You know, I talk about hope a lot on this channel. I spend a lot of time talking about the concept of putting your faith in a potential future and having some excitement for the fact that things may get much better, that hopefully things will be in a better spot in the future. And there's a lot of truth to that. I think it's very logical, even when it's hard to tell if things will actually improve or not. And it feels like all of us at some point or another deal with hopelessness, deal with this concept of things kind of overtaking us. This last week has been one that has been fairly overwhelmingly busy in a lot of ways. And I find that really, like, when I get overwhelmed with just the quantity of things I have going, with like the metaphoric balls that I have in the air, right? That I have a tendency to get more hopeless. It's almost just like that's the manifestation of it, that as I start to realize how many things I want to accomplish and how many things I want to do, that it manifests as hopelessness. Which I don't know if that's information that I've always had in the back of my mind, and it's just now, like I'm realizing this, or if it's something that I had a long time ago. I don't really know. But at this moment, I'm just kind of aware of the fact that I've had some feelings of hopelessness in the last couple weeks. And I think really it's just been linked to being super busy, not quite finishing the things I want to, the things that I am finishing not turning out in quite the way that I imagined that they would. And there's always like a little bit of sadness and trepidation that comes from putting time into a project and it doesn't manifest the way that you want. And it's hard because as artists, that's like just a natural part of what we do. There's no way to get away with the fact that if you make things, if you create things, if you're a creative human being, that sometimes those things are not quite going to turn out the way that you want them to. And that's hard. It's just hard. I don't know that there's, like, at least off the top of my head, I don't have like an immediate, yes, this is how you deal with that, because it's just a valid concern and it's real. And it's hard not to feel a lack of hope sometimes, because things are not turning out quite the way that you anticipated or you desired. It's also when you feel like the time and energy that you've put into things is not being rewarded in the capacity that you wanted. How many times have any of us put time into a project and it just doesn't quite turn out the way we wanted, and that just fills you with like a little bit of existential dread. Just a little bit of worry seeps in. My goodness, this one didn't turn out. What if the next one doesn't? How many times before it's not worth having hope or thinking or considering that things might turn out in a good way? And again, like, rational, but not great for your soul. But it does make sense. It does make some sense. It makes sense to be a little bit scared and worried that things might not be going the way that you wanted them to. And this week I felt a little bit of that. This week I've had a little bit of that awareness in my life. And of course, I bring that up not to garner pity or anything like that, but just simply because y'all who are listening are humans too. And I want you to understand and know that if you have moments like that where you feel a little bit hopeless, a little bit insecure about where things are going, about how things are being handled, that is normal. It doesn't make you fake. It doesn't make you stupid or lame. It just makes you human. course we want everything to work out. Of course we want everything to go our way, and it isn't going to, because that's just not how these things work. And that's tragic in a way, and then also just like logical in others. Like that's just the way of things. But I don't think it ever hurts to understand that your struggles are not just yours, that other people have them as well, that they're relevant. Kind of had an idea for this, and I'm already like shifting it and changing it because I probably should have sketched it first. Coming back to pen and ink for this sketchbook session, and we'll probably be doing that for a while moving forward. I haven't done enough of it lately. It's rewarding. I enjoy it. It's just it's an old trusty companion. I cannot help in this particular moment being influenced by Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, because it has, in some capacity or another, been consuming my life the last couple weeks. Game's been out for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks now, and it's wonderful. I don't remember being this excited to like playing a video game in a long time, and it's just been so thrilling to work my way through it. Not that long before I got on for this session, I was just sitting here in the basement and had my daughter on my lap and was just basically allowing her to direct me. Like, where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do right now? And so she was just directing where we were going, and she wanted to go to the snow area, and so we were going to snow areas, and we were trying to find caves and helped somebody who is stuck in a cave, and it's an amazing game. And I realized that I haven't, like, I always thought of myself as being a pretty big Zelda fan, but in reality, I've only played, like, this is my 3rd Zelda game ever, unless, you know, you take the couple minutes here and there where I played things like Majora's Mask, but I'm not considering those. I grew up with Nintendo products, and so I had Ocarina of Time when it came out, and it was an awesome game, and I adored it. And for some reason, I never got Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword and those games, even though I often had the system that would allow me to play them. I'm not sure why. My best friend growing up played Twilight Princess and loved it, so I'm not sure why I didn't play it. But I always consider myself a bit of a Zelda fan, and in reality, I've just not played that many Zelda games. But when I started playing Breath of the Wild, that was a reinvigorating moment. It brought me back to this place in my youth of mystery and wonder and excitement, and it was so cool to see all these things and just be able to explore, and wherever you explored there was something to see, and you could climb. If you could see something, you could climb up it, and if you could climb up it, then you were often rewarded with some like Korok seed or something cool. And it was such an exciting game. So exciting. And this new one has been a lot of the same. A lot of those same wonderful attributes that made me fall in love with video games again. I quit playing video games right before I got married. And in a lot of ways, I stayed mostly away from them for over a decade. And then during the pandemic, actually just prior to the pandemic, my dad bought me a Switch. And I was excited, but I actually didn't start playing it until February, after Christmas. And I started with Smash Brothers, because, as you do. And Smash Brothers was great. That was a lot of fun. Not as fun as the ones that I remembered playing on the GameCube and the Wii. But still pretty fun. But it was when I started playing Breath of the Wild that I was like, oh my goodness, like I've been asleep. The industry has continued to move, and I was unaware of it, and it's now doing crazy, wonderful things, and it just felt exciting. So exciting. So it's been this kind of interesting thing, because I grew up with video games. They were a huge part of my life for a long time, and then they just kind of fell off as being a part of my life. And I spent the majority of my time in school teaching, not playing any video games. When StarCraft 2 came out, I picked that up for a little while, but I didn't have any game systems, so I didn't have anything that allowed me to play. I had my Mac, but as any of you that have Macs will know, like, you don't have a lot of video game options on the Macs. And so I just didn't play a lot of video games. But then when I got the Switch, I was able to start diving into things, and then I unfortunately ran into Monster Hunter pretty quick after, just because there was Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate was super cheap on the Switch store. I googled it really quick and was like, oh, this looks like a fun game. Bought it for like $16 and felt like it was a terrible game at first because it was so hard. And then I kind of just like stuck with it because I felt like I wasn't getting something. And sure enough, I looked up tutorials and figured out like, oh, it's just a really complicated combat system, and it's really dedicated. It's not like Smash Brothers or Zelda where you can just kind of like swing your sword enough and you'll probably be okay. And so once I figured it out, I felt like so awesome. And so then I had this Monster Hunter addiction, which was great and all, until my brother gave me a PS4, and then I went down the rabbit hole of Monster Hunter World, and then when Monster Hunter Rise came out for the Switch, then I had that day one, and now I have way too many hours in Monster Hunter, but it's an awesome series. So I don't know, at this point, Monster Hunter is probably my favorite series, but Tears of the Kingdom and Elden Ring are probably like my two best gaming experiences that I have. Elden Ring was also just like this phenomenally game-changing game for me. It's like I didn't know, in a lot of ways, both it and Breath of the Wild were like, I didn't know games could be this. As much as I fell in love with Monster Hunter, it was understandable to me. It's like, yes, like I understand how this game works, and that genre of game was not like mind-blowing. But the way that Breath of the Wild handled things, the way that Elden Ring handled things, the way that it didn't hold your hand was just amazing. I do sometimes look at the quantity of hours that I've invested in video games in the last year and a half or 2 years, and I'm like, I should have put a lot more of that time into my art. And that's true. That really is true. I wish I could say that there's no, you know what? Everybody needs their downtime, and that is true. Everybody does need their downtime and such, but it's hard with some of these amazing games that have come out recently not to put in way more time than you should on things. So I was thinking earlier today about all of my various desires and the things that I want to do artistically, and I have a new plan, and I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go, but for the last couple of years, I've been trying to put specific time into all these areas that I want to grow in, all these areas I want to improve. And I think maybe I've been detaching it too much. And so what I think I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start working on the things that I want to work on. So I'm going to work on my fantasy story and try to just build things and draw things that are from that. And then I'm going to just try to learn each thing as I get to it. So if I need to create a character, I want to create a character, then I'll spend some time researching and specifically learning about that thing, and then I'll do that thing. And then I'll do the corresponding kinds of things when I need to for working on environments or composition, or, you know, after I finish designing kind of a structure or a city or something, then I'll try to learn and remind myself and just work on the skills for how do I put an image together and create an interesting composition, so that I don't just have this cool thing designed, but now I also have a way to like display that and show that. Because you can spend a lot of time, like, well, kind of like I am right now, where I'm drawing things from one particular angle, from the side or from the front. But this, like, isn't going to be crazy dynamic. But if I designed something like that in this fashion, then to be able to draw it in a really interesting image would be obviously much more interesting, and would be kind of a beneficial way to do that. The first problem I made here is I was started as like, I'm just going to draw this one thing and then everything's from the front. So I think as I go down, I'm going to try to basically I'm going to try to think of my horizon line as being like right here, I think. So that as these things start to come down more, you'll actually see the tops of things, because that'll give me the ability to make things a little bit more interesting. And interesting they need to be. Life's too short to have dull, uninteresting drawings. This originally started off as going to be like an ice cave, and it's definitely evolving into a sky island, because Tears of the Kingdom. So there is that. The influence is real. And that's fine for sketching time like this that doesn't have a lot of importance. It's just to remain in the thing and do the thing. It's, I think, fine to just be influenced by whatever. The biggest thing is continuing to draw, is making sure that progress is being achieved, that I'm not stagnating. Do you guys who are listening, do you have like current and specific art making goals? If you do, I would love for you to share them, because I always do, but mine are loose, and I talk about them a lot on this channel, but I'm really curious, like, is that something that you guys have at just like any given time, or is it something that like you think about when you need to? I really just don't know, by and large, like what the norm is. I know what I do. I also know that in a lot of ways I tend to be a little odd. So I'm just curious. If you do have current art goals, I would love for you to share them. I would much appreciate it. Just seems interesting and intriguing to know what other people are working on, what the goal is. What your individual goal is. Yeah, see, I think doing this where the horizon line is obviously up higher and now we can see the tops of things is going to make this this whole task, or this whole thing, just a lot more interesting. Just kind of like inadvertently was doing side scroller work. And it's just not going to be nearly as interesting as something with a little bit of perspective in it. Man, look at this horrible tree. Haven't drawn trees in a couple weeks. Looks like somebody put an old wig on a couple branches. See if there's any way I can fix this. Just trying to emphasize now the orb-like qualities of it. Thinking of each of these sections of the tree as its own spherical or semi-spherical object. Yeah, that helped a little bit. I have too many loves. I like doing too many things, and then I, return to... I've been doing mostly watercolor and ink lately, and now I'm coming back to just, straight up ink. And, of course, my skills are not in exactly the same place that I left them, because it's been a while since I've touched this. But I never anticipate that, and it always agitates me. It's always annoying. But again, I have, for better or worse, the last couple weeks have been intense. There was a new video game, and then I've also been not spending as much time working on my art as I should be. So, all excuses with varying levels of reality to them. But, I mean, whatever. I'm not a... I don't need pity. And I shouldn't give myself any. I've got work to do. That's all that it comes down to. I've got things I want to do. There's work to do now. We'll just keep working, keep making things. Just get back on the horse. And like I was mentioning earlier, I think my current plan is essentially going to be just work on stuff that I want to work on, and then try to take every opportunity I can to learn new things. So I was going through some old sketchbooks. I was going through some old notes that I have from all the way back to, oh goodness, some of it all the way back to 2003, 2004. So I was going back over some very old things. And the goal... I'm going to turn this sideways for a little bit because I want to get these marks going this direction. So what I was going back and looking at was old notes on the fantasy storyline that I've been working on since I was in high school. And I have notebooks and I have binders and folders with all kinds of sketches and drawings and languages and other things that I developed over that time period. And so just kind of diving back in, and I think that some of my new art goals might be I'm just going to dedicate X amount of time or X amount of pieces to this city or this species. And I think I'm going to be working on landscapes and city designs and stuff at the beginning because it's a little bit less intimidating for me. And then eventually I'll hopefully get into characters and creatures and whatnot. And I really don't mind working on environmental stuff. I really don't care. I like designing and building anything. I like when I can get it to turn out the way that I want it to. But, I mean, who doesn't? A lot of times I end up doing the same kind of stuff all the time just because it's reliable. When in reality, I'd way rather be creating things from scratch, all the time. That's what I like to do. But I'm not that great at it. I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot of things that I need to keep wrapping my head around, and in order to do that, I need to practice. All right, let's try another tree over here. It's a little bit better silhouette. This one's going to be kind of funky, but we'll go with it. That's not bad either. It's kind of interesting. This little islandy guy is like a little bit further in the background, so it's... let's do some of these roots like coming out. Side that all of a sudden seems like way too big. The design of all of the islands and the sky islands and whatnot in Tears of the Kingdom are really fascinating, because though you don't have to spend a ton of time on any of them, it feels like if you actually take like a couple minutes and you really try to examine what you're looking at on each of them, there's just so much going on. There's so many tiny little details about the structure and like the roots coming through, and sometimes technology that was utilized to make it float or things like that. So there's just so many like weird, interesting things, and I love the lore, and so I love being able to sit there and like pull things apart and try to ascertain like what happened here, like why is this floating, why is this destroyed, why is this the way it is. And there's just like an infinite amount of that. On that same train of thought, I've decided that I'm going to start rewatching and maybe rereading The Lord of the Rings, because a huge amount of my influence I just realized I have the audiobooks. Awesome. That's what I'll do for that part. A huge amount of my influence has always come from those kind of stories and things. And so to be able, I think just I'll be reinvigorated by going back and looking at some of those things. And so I think that's going to be a wise endeavor for me as I try to hammer out like what I want to do and what kind of work I want to be producing. I think it's very possible that the broad avenues that I've taken in the last couple years have actually been hampering to me, because it's just not been that interesting. It's like, cool, I'm learning about how to draw, people from, this particular artist's way of doing them, but like it's not connecting to what I want to do. And I've taken several classes from Marshall Vandriff, and I remember that actually being one of the things that he mentioned is like, none of this is important unless you make it important to you. You've got to find a way to turn this into something that matters to you. And he's totally right. If I had taken the time during those classes to tie them into my stories, tie them into what I'm wanting to illustrate, then all of a sudden all of it makes more sense. All of it is more prudent. I'm more likely to actually do something with it. So, but again, I have been the teacher for a long time, and now I'm learning how to student again. And it's humbling and infuriating, but I feel like those two are usually in conjunction with one another, aren't they? Like, being humbled is not usually a particularly pleasant thing, is it? So what do you do? What do you do? I don't know why trees have always been so difficult. They feel like such amorphous things. Like I want a list of rules for how they work, but they're so ethereal to me, and they just seem so blasted hard. And I don't know that they need to be, but my goodness, like they've always been a struggle for me. Because it feels like it should be simple. It feels like it's like, oh, well, it's like a pine tree. You just do this like triangle thing, and it's like, no, they're complicated, and they're not solid, and you don't see all of it. You've got leaves that are, covering maybe 30% of an area, and then you've got branches that you can kind of see back beyond there. They seem so hard to me. So difficult. And like I can tell with this guy because this guy doesn't look great. Oh. Whoops, sorry. The stuff that I was working on for the last couple minutes is down there. But again, this is one of those things where I think what I'm going to start doing is when I hit this point where I'm sketching a tree and it's not doing what I want, I'm going to start looking up references and how other artists are solving these problems. Because I think in so doing, I can start learning a little bit more readily and also start applying things that I'm learning right away. I think that's part of what I've been missing. The goal and desire to do things from my imagination has led me a lot of times to not to just stay in that realm, to be like, well, my goal is to do this from imagination, so I'm going to just push through and do it from imagination even if it doesn't turn out that well. And I think there is a small amount to be said for that, but there's also just like, suck it up, man. Just, it doesn't, there's no shame in using references. There's no shame in having a better piece because you spent time researching how it needed to be actually done and done correctly. I really want to right now, but it feels awkward during a sketchbook session to do that. So I'm not going to, but rest assured, I'll be going and spending some time. And then when I finally open up my other channel, that's specifically like teaching beginners how to draw and paint and whatnot, I think I'm gonna definitely have some little lessons on like, here's how to tree, here's how to mountain, here's how to do all these things that I was terrible at for so long and am now slightly less terrible. I think there's also a good chance that I just don't put enough time into it in between things, that I have a tendency to like learn how to do a thing and then I get distracted and I do other things, and too much time transpires in between learning the thing and then applying the thing again, and I think that can be real detrimental. Where did I say the horizon line was on this guy? Let's just go ahead and put a horizon line on there. I think. Oh, that's my water on the ground. All right, so I think I was saying it was like right about here. Yeah, it doesn't look level at all, but that's because the screen's not level. There we go. I think that's about right. We'll just do this. Who knows if that's a good idea or not, but it'll just help me to understand as I'm looking at things. And another thing, like now it's like, oh, I kind of want to put clouds up there, but like clouds are another one of those things that like I'm really bad at. They seem so very difficult to me. I am going to put some little mountains back in the background here, though. Eh. I mean, that definitely raises some questions, having the horizon line there, now that I think about it, because we're supposed to be like way up in the sky. But again, that horizon line could be super, super far away. Yeah, I'm like, because normally if we're looking straight at the horizon line, it seems like the horizon line would be way further down here. But you could, like, if you're up in the sky and you're looking at things, like the horizon line could be down there, and then, yeah, this is like mind bending now. I'm not sure. I'm just not 100% sure. I'm confusing myself. Maybe I should try sketching before I do these. I feel like I've talked about that before, haven't I? That, like, maybe sketching before, and out an idea before I start just committing with pen or with watercolor ink or brush pen or something might be a good idea. But right now we're just here. We're doing this. Trying not to be too self-conscious about everything and how it's transpiring. It's hard not to be. Hard not to be in general, hard not to be when I'm recording. That horizon line thing is agitating me now. I'm like, I know intellectually that you can have a horizon line. Like, you could go up to the top of a skyscraper, and if you're looking out straight across the skyscraper, that the horizon line for where you are is, it's where your vision is. But if you're way up there, like, the horizon line for the world is going to be down below. It's, yeah, I feel confused. I feel confused. But again, I've said this a lot in my videos and whatnot, if you feel a little overwhelmed or confused, or like there's just too many things to wrap your head around artistically, sorry, welcome to being human. There just are a lot of things. There are way more things than you could ever master to consider about how the world transpires and how it's all put together. All right, I think that's it for this session. I hope you hate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.